Welcome to the France 24 debate. The situation in Guinea is our focus in this edition. I'm Mark Owen in Paris. The military coup saw President Alpha Condé arrested and detained. Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya emerged as the face of the new military leaders. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres reacted by slamming the taking of power at gunpoint. Neighbouring states followed this lead, adding their condemnation, and followed the West African Economic Group, ECOWAS, and the African Union. Well, Colonel Doumbouya has announced there will be a government of national unity and a swift transition to democratic governance. And today, 10 days later, is the start of a process towards that aim. Our guests will be talking to us through the stakes, through the threats, opportunities, strengths, weaknesses that this presents. Let's introduce you to those guests. Niagalé Bagayoko is from the African Security Sector Network. Niagalé, thanks for joining us. On the other side of our studio, Doudou SIDIBE, who's Professor of Political Science at the University of Gustave Eiffel. Thanks for being with us, sir.
My pleasure.
Joining us from afar, Aboubacar, DIABY, researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association. Thanks for being with us, sir. And Douglas Yates, Professor of African Studies at the American Graduate School here in Paris. Douglas, pleasure to see you. James André is our correspondent in Conakry. He's awaiting us live. James, set the scene for us.
Well, basically what we've been seeing, we've been here for a week now, is that basically a lot of the people throughout the country we've spoken for are actually backing this coup, which indeed took place on the Sunday 5th of September. Now, since that Sunday, we've not heard Mamadi Doumbouya, who is the new strongman here in Guinea, who has been... Yes, who is the new country strongman, Mamadi Doumbouya, has not spoken publicly since that Sunday, but that is going to change tonight because indeed there has been a speech that has been recorded by the local television here, and that's probably going to be aired at 8 p.m. Now, what's been taking place today at the People's Palace, where I'm standing here in Conakry, is the first step towards a transition government. The idea was to meet all the stakeholders here in the country. These talks are going to last for 4 days. The first day has taken place, and indeed during this first day we have 3 groups that have been invited to meet Mamadi Doumbouya and the junta. That is the politicians, the religious leaders, and the traditional regional leaders of the 4 provinces that form Guinea. Now, the political leaders was obviously the one that everyone was watching, and indeed we could speak to them as they came out. We were not allowed to attend the meetings, or not even allowed to attend the speech by Mamadi Doumbouya that was the beginning of this meeting. Now, we did speak to the opposition leader, Cellou Dalein Diallo, and he told us that basically he felt that he'd been listened to. He felt that indeed Mamadi Doumbouya was calm, was relaxed. He said that basically his speech was about not personifying power around his own persona. He also said that he wanted transparency. He said that indeed, this is Cellou Dalein Diallo, he said that he found that he spoke openly and frankly. So basically the leader of the opposition happy with this first contact with the junta. Now, we do know that Cellou Dalein Diallo was in favor of the coup. He said it over and over again. Now, at the end of this meeting, the junta invited the political leaders to present a memorandum about what they believe is required in Guinea in order to have a smooth transition back to democracy.
James André in Conakry, thank you very much indeed. James, as he says, been there for a week, observing the situation and watching for all developments. Thank you, sir, very much indeed. Let's bring the debate to our studio and bring in first Niagalé Bagayoko of the African Security Sector Network. Niagalé, when you hear and see what has been happening, when you know what's at stake, what are your feelings right now about the situation?
What is very interesting is to see that there is undoubtedly something which is trying to put together and to set up a kind of inclusive approach, I would say, from the very beginning. So this is something which should be seen as a reassuring, and also the fact that a community from Guinea are brought together, because one of the defining feature of Alpha Condé governance was also is a community-based discourse tending to oppose a different community is a very good sign, because what is important to remember is that Mamadi Doumbouya is belonging to the same community group, Malinke, as Alpha Condé. So the fact that Selou Dalen Diallo from Fulani community to be involved in those talks is, in my view, a very positive development.
Okay, positive new Niagalé. Let's cross the studio and bring in Doudou SIDIBE, Professor of Political Science at the University of Gustave Eiffel. Good evening, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening.
Essentially, give us your take on the situation, because we've heard from our correspondent in Conakry that things on the surface look like they're progressing well.
Yeah, I think that things are progressing. I don't know if they are progressing well, but they are progressing.
So
because the fact of discussing...
That's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because the fact of having the will to gather all the stakeholders and to discuss the political parties, youth, women, local and traditional powers, everything put together, everyone put together to discuss and to see how to develop this transition, I think that it's a good thing. So because he had to listen, to understand, and then to take a decision.
Thank you, sir. Let's bring in Aboubacar DIABY, researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association, joining us from the US. Aboubacar, I hope you can hear me, and I hope you heard what our guests were saying. Pleasure to have you on the programme, and we're looking forward to hearing what you think about the situation, as we've been hearing it from Conakry. Tell us, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I think the situation, what's happening actually in Guinea is from many people in Guinea, they think that this was entirely predictable. Because if you look at the social dimension, the political and economic dimension, the country was completely destroyed by his leaders. So the rising of the military coup in Guinea right now was I think, from my understanding, was a good move for the country to move to another chapter of his life. So from my understanding, the situation of this coup was predictable.
Aboubacar, thank you very much indeed. Douglas, I hope you can hear us. Douglas joining us from a part of Paris. Good to see you, sir. It's always a pleasure to have your input on all matters African. And I know you have a particular interest in Guinea. Is this, as Aboubacar was saying, the start of a new chapter, or are we starting a different book? What's your thought?
Well, I see this as a cycle, a constantly repeating cycle of coup d'etat. This is now an army push by special forces, then restoration of civilian rule, followed by a coup d'etat. There was a coup in 1984, and then another coup in 2008, and now in 2021. So the coups, the cycles are more frequent. They're happening more frequently now. The last coup was, a dozen years ago. The next one probably will be in 6 years.
Douglas, thank you very much indeed. Niagalé, can I bring you back in? Douglas talking about a kind of cycle that's happening. Clearly in neighbouring countries, I'm thinking Mali, Chad, we've seen similar kinds of moves, which may be in some way indicative of some sort of pattern across the region?
Yes, what is also important to say, I think, is what is a coup? Is a coup only military, or can a coup be civilian as well? And the problem that we do have today in Guinea is that we do have two illegitimate leaders who are at stake, because what happened in the country is the fact that Alpha Condé has been running for a third term whilst he was not allowed initially by the constitutions. So it was very problematic to see that there was no real reaction against this from institutional multilateral African organizations such as the African Union and ECOWAS. And as you were just saying, what happened in Chad, in my view, is a real precedent, because when the former leader Idriss Déby passed away, he was replaced by a junta led by our son, and it was the first time that the African Union took no real sanction against the country. There has been a kind of validation of this coup, and it was more or less logical that other countries look at it as something conducing to other intervention of the military. And this is what happened, in fact,
So
in Mali.
you're saying that the lack of action from the likes of the African Union emboldened the colonel to make the move he made?
In my view, it is much more than a lack of action. It is, in fact, a kind of a betrayal of the mandate, the very mandate of those organizations who have been installed to promote democracy, constitutional order, and rule of law. And today, we can see that those principles are put behind the interest of the different state members of those organizations, interest of state members who are also competing once against each other.
Niagalé, thank you very much indeed. Doudou, could I bring you back in to ask really about the situation regarding Alpha Condé? I mean, clearly, as Niagalé was pointing out, this is a man who twisted the constitution to seek another mandate, and that resulted in his downfall.
I think that the fact of changing the constitution, the fact of researching a third term in several countries is a problem. And if you see in 2 countries, it is the case. Okay, in one country, it is matter of fragility. Okay, but in Chad and in Guinea, it's a matter of having a third term. It is not yet the case in Ivory Coast, but who knows? In matter of few days or few months or a year, what will happen? But ECOWAS normally would forbid this third term to all its member states to seek it, because it creates instability, it creates conflict. They have to resolve, and they have to do it ahead, before waiting that this happen and trying to resolve it. A coup d'etat and a coup d'etat, military coup d'etat, I would say, and a constitutional coup d'etat, which one to condemn? I don't know.
So are you saying that ECOWAS really should have acted in some way before. Having seen what Alpha Condé was trying to do? Alpha Condé, long-standing leader, one-time freedom fighter. It's worth pointing out his history with the country. I mean, clearly his heart was there, but somewhere along the line, power corrupts, doesn't it, and things change?
Yeah, people can change, with power. We used to say that power corrupts, people. Before, they are not fond of power. But once they are in power, they would like to stay, even if they are very old. Alpha Condé is 83, okay? He should retire, but he wanted to have a set term. And this is the consequence is that he's pushing his country into conflict that will be difficult to resolve when it starts.
It's worthwhile pointing out that this coup has been bloodless. No one has lost their life. It's been carried out in that way. So
no, they have 20 military
From the presidential
the presidential guard who lost their life.
20 military from the presidential guard lost their life.
Absolutely.
I was thinking in terms of civilians, but clearly, thank you for correcting that error, because that's very important, because any loss of life is important. So 20 casualties amongst the military. Thank you so very much indeed. Let's bring back in Aboubacar Diaby, researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association, joining us in the US. Aboubacar, the assessment there about Alpha Condé and his desire to keep hold of power. Do you see this as, it's not just a Guinean problem, clearly, as Niagalé was pointing out, other countries, as Doudou was talking about, Ivory Coast, we've seen other places across Africa where this is almost an endemic issue?
Well, thank you. This is a good question. Like, let's say in the last 16 years, African countries, most of the African countries has experienced almost 42 coup d'etat, as the data show. So it's very sad in Guinea to see that Alpha Conde, who was like a prophet to bring peace, like to bring development and bring stability in the region, he became a dictator. It's very sad to see that. But we have to analyze this aspect in two areas. The first area, Alpha Conde is from this. He's from my tribe. We came from the same ethnic group. But he was playing the ethnic line, the ethnic card in the country. And secondly, he tried to change the constitution to remain and die in power. So it's not like Mamadi Doumbouya, he's from Alpha ethnic group. So he was the right time to take over and to lead the country to the right direction. It's not about the political line. Yes, we do have that. Africa has many problems in terms of ethnic line, but the main problem here was time to move forward. You know, like if you see the growing poverty in Guinea is extreme. And people don't have the right stable life to move forward. So it was a time and a good moment to do the coup and move forward. I don't agree with the coup d'etat, but this situation was a good move for Guinea to move forward.
You don't agree with the coup, you don't agree with the nature of the coup, you don't agree with the violence of the coup, but you agree with the nature of the notion of change. That's the message I'm getting. Aboubacar, I need to stop you because we need to take a very short break, but I promise you, more discussion when we come back for part 2. Stay with us. Welcome back to the France 24 debate. We're examining the stakes for Guinea as the West African state starts a process of moving out of a military coup scenario into a national unity government and democratic governance in general. One thing is for sure, with 50% of the population living below the poverty line, people in Guinea are crying out for change, positive change. This report from James André in Conakry.
Bonfi is one of Conakry's poorest neighborhoods. Aboubacar Keita, 28, lives here. A young father, he has to share this home with 3 generations of his family. There is no running water. He works as a security guard for 70 euros a month. Times are hard.
Là, c'est trop. Oui, ça peut être, il y a des matinées dans la famille même. Il y en a qui ne gagnent pas à manger. On peut passer la journée comme ça, sans rien mettre dans le ventre.
In Guinea, schools are due to reopen in 3 weeks, but this family has had to choose food over education. Abdoulaye, the elder, has lived through all the political regimes since the independence. He feels life is tougher now than ever before.
Le plus important pour nous, nous voulons que la Guinée aille en avant. Que la population guinéenne, tout le monde gagne son petit pain. C'est ce que nous voulons normalement. Mais si, avec nos responsables, ça n'allait pas du tout. Ah, on va voir cette fois-ci.
Neighborhoods like this one have been abandoned by successive governments for 60 years. This time, they hope things will be different, that they will be considered and especially offered jobs and opportunities to rise out of poverty.
Sharing a house of 3 generations, 70 euros a month, it gives you a real sense of what poverty is like in that part of the world. James André, our reporter there. Let's reintroduce our guest, Niagalé Bagayoko from the African Security Sector Network. Thanks for being with us, Niagalé. On the other side of the studio, Doudou SIDIBE, Professor of Political Science at the University of Gustave Eiffel. Great to see you. Joining us from the States, Aboubacar DIABY, researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association. And Douglas Yates joining us too from Paris, Professor of African Studies at the American Graduate School. We saw that report from James. We know what the stakes are. Niagalé, can I start by asking you, the development of Guinea from now, how important is the aspect of democracy, or is just strong governance the important thing?
Very good questions. I think one are going together. There cannot be a real separation, because I don't think that poverty is necessarily conducing to criminality or to bad governance or to jihadism, to say. But of course, I think that what is happening today more broadly in African countries is the fact that the populations at large have not seen any results coming from democracy in their daily lives. And there is a kind of distrust to political elected leaders who have failed in terms of democratization, in terms of development, in terms of education, in terms of urbanization, in terms of all the promises which have been made for each ballot. That's a key problem in my view. The lack also of legitimacy, which is increasingly expanding all over African countries.
So that lack of
Francophone Africa, at least.
Legitimacy or credibility, the fact that the people who are trying to be in charge don't really sort of seem credible. It's one of the big issues, isn't it, I suppose?
Absolutely.
Niagalé, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring in Doudou on this one. The Colonel, Doumbouya, very practical in many ways, because whilst he imposed a curfew on Guinea after the coup, he didn't impose that curfew around the bauxite mines. He's seen that economically it's important to keep things moving and keep the exports going. Is that kind of pragmatic approach what this country needs, do you think?
Yeah, of course. I think that the state should continue, okay? And also the economy should also continue. That is why it is good to let miners, investors to continue their work. In order to have the necessary profit to elevate poverty in Guinea. Poverty is a threat to democracy because if population are poor, they can go to riots, and this can create, when you repress the riots, this can create a conflict. Many conflicts, started like that because of repression. Okay, there is a direct link between poverty. If you read Paul Collier from World Bank, he did a study on that, That is why it is good to fight against poverty. And in Guinea, you have 44% of poor population. It's a lot.
I read that it was like 50% of people living below the poverty line.
Absolutely.
And it's to all people watching this internationally, of course, because this goes out all over the world, they'll have their own notion of what poverty is. So, for instance, where I was brought up, people were considered to be poor, but they would have social security, they'd have things to support them.
Absolutely.
I take it people in Guinea aren't going to have that kind of backing, that kind of safety net.
Yeah, they should have all these things.
They should have all these things, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. And they have the necessary resources for that, But there is corruption. There is also what I call bad negotiations. They were not able to negotiate, really their interests, with multinational in order to exploit these resources and get profits. Okay? And this is a problem all over Africa, Negotiation is of paramount importance for me, for the states. They should, train their staff in order to negotiate their interests in several domains.
Doudou, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to the States, to Aboubacar, DIABY researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association. Aboubacar, thanks for waiting patiently to have your next contribution here in part two. Trickle-down economics is kind of a phrase that's coming to mind. If the bauxite mines are opening and working, if the exports are working, then the money will come in and it will come down to the poorest people and perhaps help them. Do you think that'll work in Guinea?
Well, it's not working. That's a good question. That's a good point to mention. So the main problem in Guinea, is a lack of leadership. Is the main problem. If there's a lack of leadership, there's no way forward for development. So in Guinea, since 1984, let's say 1984, Guinea has experienced many coups d'etat and many lack of leadership. How we will think that is good time to move forward with to against and to fight poverty? No. So the best way, because to fight poverty, you have to have a good governance. Governance is the key factor for international development. So now, what I like about Mr. Doumbouya, the military junta, the leader of the military, he read people's mind. What the Guineans want, what the people want. It's not like Guinea is divided in so many lines, but he read their mind. He says it's time to move. It's time to fight poor leadership. It's time to take over. And include people in the governance. That's the main message he's trying to send out to the people of Guinea. I think that's the good move. So Guinea has experienced lack of leadership for 25 years. So it's time to go more. It's time to go forward and call the diaspora to come back home and do their best so that the country can take over and move forward. That's my takeaway of this debate.
Aboubacar, thank you very much indeed. I'm getting a sense that this isn't just a lip service being paid to a process, but something that is developing. We're getting positive sounds coming from Conakry, but as Doudou pointed out, there's positive and really positive, and that nuance is very, very interesting. Let's take a listen to Colonel Doumbouya speaking a few days ago, of course, about this process that he wants the country to go through.
It's our duty to save the country and bring the Ghanaian people together. We will put a system in place for all of the people to come together, because a political system that is not inclusive is a system that is not based on peace.
Douglas Yates, let me bring you in here. The Colonel Doumbouya, one of his political heroes, or perhaps his political heroes, Jerry Rawlings of Ghana. Do you see that as a good sign?
No, I'm afraid I'm an opponent of military rule. The fact of the matter is the colonel doesn't understand the international system. There might be a change of leadership in Guinea, but nothing has changed outside. Guinea just borrowed $20 billion from China. Xi Jinping is still in office. That money is going to go to bauxite mines and an alumina refinery, but that's going to take years for that money to translate into revenue. So he's not going to have any revenue from that unless he steals. The rest of the money is an IMF standby agreement, and the IMF is going to require he balances his budget, he increase taxes, he stops subsidy for food, petrol, and electricity, or that money is cut. And it was precisely those policies that made Alpha Condé unpopular. So either he becomes a kleptocrat and steals money, or he attempts to implement the policies that will saw the branch that he is sitting on. Either way, this regime will end as it started.
So the situation, Douglas, as you're pointing it out to us, it looks like being between a rock and a hard place would actually be a good thing. This seems to be a lot worse than that.
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is nothing fundamentally has changed for Guinea because they've changed leaders. The corruption is endemic. Apart from the failure of distribution, we're just speaking macroeconomically. Guinea has minerals. 60% of its population grows food. To produce those minerals, it takes time. They will generate revenues, but those revenues are insufficient for Guinea's development needs. The rest is financed on debt. And by the way they're developing those minerals is $20 billion in new debt to China, which will only make them more in arrears, make it more difficult for them to balance their budget.
Indeed, Chinese influence is one thing we've debated here many times, the Chinese growing influence across Africa. Douglas, thank you very much indeed as ever. Douglas Yates from the American Graduate School here in Paris. Here in the studio, Niagalé Bagayoko of the African Security Sector Network, Doudou SIDIBE of Gustave Eiffel University, and Aboubacar DIABY joining us from the States, researcher at the Guinea Political Science Association. Aboubacar, can I bring you in on this one? Do you share the pessimism that we heard there from Douglas Yates, Aboubacar? Tell us what you think over there in the US. Aboubacar DIABY, go ahead, please, sir.
Yes, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We lost your vision for a while, sir, but I can see you now over my shoulder, which is very reassuring.
Yes.
And please, you've got the floor. Please speak to us.
Well, I definitely agree. I definitely share the panel view. You know, they have pointed out many issues African is facing, and most of the, Guinea particularly is facing. Yes, there is a hope. There is a hope if we have a good governance. There is a hope if we have a sense of understanding that democracy is not a Western value. Democracy is a universal value. Because most of the people in Africa, even in the population, they don't get it. Democracy, what is about democracy? So democracy is not just the European and the American value, it's a Western value. So in order to understand that, it's time to move forward for the Guinea people. But like good governance is the factual. I agree, actually, most of the area the panel point out, but good governance and good leadership will be the key for Guinea to move forward in the 21st century.
Thank you, Aboubacar. We call this the debate, but I think there's no real debate here. I think everybody wants what's best for Guinea. That's the main thing, isn't it? And everybody, it's a question of how that works, I suppose. So, Niagalé, can I bring you in again to talk about, well, to ask you, in these discussions going ahead now in Guinea, what is the most important thing, do you think? I mean, clearly the dialogue is important. Clearly the idea of laying down this path to democracy is important. Clearly strong leadership is important too. What would you say is the essential thing from your perspective that needs to be hit upon to make this work?
From my own point of view, I definitely think that to have good governance, you also have to have good governance in the security sector. And to have it, it is absolutely crucial to change the approach we have to this security sector. Because, as we can see, when you look, for instance, at Mamadi Doumbouya background, you can see that he has been trained in a lot of Western or Eastern France, but not only Israel, also other countries. And I think today, not only in Guinea, but everywhere in Francophone Africa, there is a real need to depart from those approaches based only on training and on reinforcing operational capabilities to fight. There is a need also to focus on the good governance, on transparency, on accountability of the democratic, of the security apparatuses as well, and also on the way in which they are also taught how to show respect to human rights. And those two dimensions are directly missing from all the approaches that international community has tried to push to make professional military to be reformed. Of course, you have also the UNDP, who has been involved in very deep reform in Guinea to help the military to change. But we can see that it is a total failure. So, in my view, there is a need to change the operational approach to a security approach based on governance, democratic governance.
Democratic governance, Doudou, I can imagine you're agreeing with that, but give us it in your words.
Yeah, I agree with her because without a good governance, Guinea cannot achieve its goals, okay? But I think that it's not only about leadership. Leadership, yes, but also to build strong institutions, okay? Because without strong institutions, the leaders can do whatever they like while ruling, okay? I think that we have to rethink the political system in Africa. We should not let only one person decide on everything. We should have a kind of check and balance, in all the system in order to oblige the president to negotiate. Okay, I would say like a polyarchic system in order to negotiate. Different bodies of power would negotiate in order to take a decision. And I imagine the decision will be the best because it is negotiated by several stakeholders. It's my point of view.
When you said that word about not entrusting it to one man, I went to my notes and remember that Colonel Doumbouya said, we will no longer entrust politics to one man, we entrust it to the people.
Exactly.
Which are great words, but
absolutely.
Do those words mean anything? Does he mean, I mean, I suppose we'll see what happens, but yeah. It's easy to say, it's difficult to do.
Yeah, in Guinea, they are called people of Guinea, le peuple de Guinée. It's the only country I could hear that, What does it mean? It means that they focus on people, theoretically, but practically, the leaders do not implement it, okay? They should let the people convey their ideas, their feeling, okay? Give them the liberty, the capabilities in order to achieve their dream of getting out of poverty. And I think that they can do it.
This is fantastic stuff, Doudou. Thank you. Douglas Yates, can I bring you in? Because it sounds like what we're calling for here from our panel. I'm sure you will agree, but you'll have a take on this, and that's why we love having you on the programme. Douglas Yates, the idea that we're hearing of changing something for the people is obviously one thing. It is the big problem that the politicians in the past and perhaps in the future usually have their own interests first, and then those are the people second.
Well, yes, all of the measures of corruption and the perception of corruption show that it is endemic at every level of Guinean society. So as long as you've got a system where resources are diverted, they're unlikely to reach the people. So what you've got is a new government that is going to soon face a cash crisis, a money crisis, and it only has a few places to go. Private banks, rich Western countries, or China and Russia, and that's it. And it's only got really one kind of thing to offer, and those are minerals. So the new rulers might be able to offer symbolic gestures of legitimacy, like releasing prisoners and reopening the headquarters of the opposition campaign and holding talks. But when you're looking at the bottom line of where their money's going to come from, they're going to have to implement austerity, and that's going to undermine any legitimacy that they can build with populist measures. Ultimately, military rule, unless it's a regime of exception, a temporary measure waiting for elections, will be illegitimate, will become a tyranny.
Douglas, I'm listening to you, and you make sense. You make you make a lot of sense with everything you say. But I'm kind of wondering, how much more austere can it be, given people are living in such dire poverty?
What's happened is mineral prices have gone up because COVID stopped, but at the same time, food prices have gone up. And therefore fuel prices have gone up, and all of the things Guinea can't provide for itself have increased. So either the government subsidizes those prices for the poor and then goes into deficit and goes into debt, or the government cuts those subsidies and then we have popular protests or another coup d'etat.
Douglas Yates, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to the United States. Aboubacar DIABY of the Guinea Political Science Association. Aboubacar, you heard what Douglas had to say. I'm wondering how you're feeling about the talks that have begun, the developments that are going to happen. Are you feeling positive now at this point in our debate about what happens next for your country?
Yes, of course.
Still positive, yeah?
Yeah, of course. Yes,
Good.
I can definitely say that. Well, let's say Guinea is very rich, just poorly managed in the past. That's the one. That's main point. That's the main point. Actually, what's happening actually in Guinea. The second element, the most important element, I will say, Colonel Doumbouya right now deserves a chance. People support him. Let him show what he's capable of.
Simple as that. Do you see him as being the leader? Because clearly what we're looking at, or I presume, what we're trying to see in Guinea is some kind of transition towards the people making the choice of who rules, rather than an army man saying, I'm in command.
Well, that's not the case. He's trying to put in place the transitional regime. It's not like he's going to stay in power like Alpha Condé did and change the constitution. He's trying to put in place a good governance and a constitution. There's no governance without a good constitution. That's the key factor. So now it's time for him, like he said at the beginning, when he took over with his team, he said that it's time to put in place a good governance. Without a good constitution, there's no governance. So what Guinea need actually right now, we need an inclusive society where rule of law, and a strong constitution are a key element for Guinea people. That's my understanding.
Well, here's to that, and let's hope that is respected. Final comment to you, Niagalé, about what happens next. If you could basically wave a magic wand and make it happen, what would it be?
I agree that the question of rule of law is absolutely crucial, as my colleague was saying, and to build strong institutions is key. But there is also a need for all stakeholders to show respect to those legal frameworks. That's absolutely indispensable. And until we cannot reach this situation, I think we will stay in the kind of cycle which was described by Douglas with unconstitutional changes of constitution and then military coups.
Thank you. I'm stealing another 10 seconds for you, Doudou. Your final word.
Yeah, my final word is I'm wondering how much time the transition will last. Okay, maybe the shorter is the better for me. Okay, maybe 1.5 years maximum.
Doudou, thank you very much indeed. My producers now told me we are out of time, so I apologise for overrunning, but I had to get these guests their final words. Niagalé Bagayoko of the African Security Sector Network, thank you. Doudou SIDIBE of the University of Gustave Eiffel, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to Aboubacar DIABY in the States there at the Guinea Political Science Association, and thanks to Douglas Yates here in Paris at the American Graduate School. Thank you for watching. Stay with us. You're watching France 24.